Julie here with Sirius Taurus Moon, and this is really continuing on the topic of esoterics as the moon is slowly applying to conjoin my own Urania in the 8th house of occult. Um, so yeah, almost it has the nakshatra. The moon is separating from the opposition to Saturn, where we would expect the opposition moon and Saturn um, from an occultistic house in a natal chart to give kind of like the reality check, because Saturn is asking wherever it is, where do we put the boundaries so that we can grow something that stands the test of time? And in terms of occultism, where do we put the boundaries or the restrictions or the dedication in a way that we can actually grow, whether as women or as people in general, practicing esoterics and practicing the occult. And one good idea is abolishing ritual abuse and targeting of infants and occultistic rape, or the subjecting of others to it. Now, as usually things are probably more intricate than they seem at face value, yet this is the chapter of tending to it, because this is what builds the cornerstones and the legacies that stand the test of time, but also the recoveries and the grounding that is needed for the people that might not be busy building a legacy now, but rather tending to their inner child so that they can even be. Um, Venus, 6 degree Gemini, also reminds us that some legacies are built by chance, or when a person is believing that they have retired. Um, and this is something that is just natural, because when the stress of creation is alleviated, then the spark of ideas, basically yin is respected, and then the creative ideas just flow and flow and flow. Um, and that is just lovely, when I think about when I just began to paint and paint with astrology. It was around the Ukraine war, and I was tending to the missing people, and then water expansible and cooling came about, and it basically could have sparked a series, which would be around my Neptune square, or when I began to do the Spica talismanic paintings um, that really exposed actually the opposition to Aries and my natal Uranus being a point of talus between my Urania and my Aries. So this is where none of that was intended. All of that was accidentally legacy building when I was completely retired, um, and while I was trying to just be, and so this is where um, this is also where subjecting women to rape because they are artists or because they are women cannot be a cornerstone of any legacy that stands the test of time. Definitely not if we want to have, let's say, a legacy as a woman and something that would extend our time and not be plagiarized, because rape is occultistic and it's plagiarism inherently. I remember when I tended to the topic of plagiarism in kind of like an Abraham Hicks way, and I was trying to see about this topic because it was an issue that I was dealing with myself. Later, I would find the connection between the Me Too and plagiarism, and I was like, wait a second, those that rape were also plagiarizing, and I was like, yeah, that rape was occultistic, um, which I would only find out in recent years. And so the same sensitivity, because I was stopping at thinking of how we can, let's say, de-rape our food, um, where a woman escaping from her violent husband or cult-like community that want to sacrifice and rape one another, um, then that woman would eat whatever is available. And an avocado plantation where people are raped and tortured as slaves is not more ecosystemic than basically cattle. In fact, the desensitization that require us to try and eat meat for something that is more nourishing or more satiating stems from basically mineral malabsorption, but also ecosystemic mineral depletion that stems from rape. Now, and I don't even know if we can be, let's say, vegan or not, or if being vegan is is any less sentient than projecting um, on animals that they are more human-like or more sensitive to pain than plants. Um, Definitely, the way cattle is treated is not the way to treat it. Um, but also with plants, biodiversity is important for sustaining life and preventing the type of fungi that are toxic and can easily destroy crops, for example. Um, Now, for example, soldiers in very harsh climates would tell me that there would be cannibalism among the soldiers. In fact, I know that because they were talking about this in Israel, where they were thinking about the possibility of an all war, and people said, "What? People are going to eat each other in Lebanon?" And by the way, raped people resort to cannibalism less. Sorry, people that are not raped resort to cannibalism less. And so the big legacies that are built by the people that perpetuate rape are tumbled down when we think about this is also the time where, and we already saw it with the triple quadruple conjunction that we had in Capricorn and the burned churches in Netherlands. We already saw things of legacy religion, Templar and spiritual connotations being burned, being crushed, being obliterated. This can go all the way to Hellenistic tradition and the um, the many stone monasteries or stone buildings that we have denotating the pantheon. We saw that in Syria upon the Syria civil war that developed into something way more intense, and how the pillars of the culture were literally destroyed. Now, we have to, when we look deeper into the culture, we sort the wheat from the chaff. We look at, let's say, Hellenistic tradition. It's kind of like, yeah, that was the time that men discovered that their sperm is also important to the creation of babies and began to rape. And then Diana became the goddess of the hunt, which was and by the way, I really need to find a video where I learned about those changes in tradition, where there was Diana as the goddess of fertility, and then in Hellenistic tradition, kind of like Diana became Artemis, because this particular thing is not my point, and I think that with all my discussion, it can come across as though that was my original issue, and it wasn't. I need to find the video where I learned that Diana became Artemis, because this is actually not the historical scan that I did. And then I was like, oh my God, that changes. That's the Hellenistic astrology. It's the night sect and day sect. That's the courtesan, cartisan. All of these things I built upon it, but that was the cornerstone, which was like getting me to that eureka, where men discovered that they are important in having babies. And it's not just the woman that chooses a man and then brings a baby to him by her choice. And this is where they begin to exercise that as raping women. So Artemis was protecting women from being raped and protecting the childless women, basically not to be forcibly wed upon puberty, and then the women not to be raped, and then it was protecting of single mothers, I think, and also of children. And this is where one of the most Hellenistic important goddesses that was in herself a creation of the timeline where men began to exercise their um, ability to bring children by raping women. Now, it's not like we didn't have ideation of rape before that. Um, but this is also how the context of even astrology is practiced within a context, and how sorting the wheat from the chaff also means that. It also means being aware that, wait a second, in a world without rape, Artemis is Diana, but she doesn't have to hunt as much because there are like food forests. And so and then is the question, like, we don't even know the world without rape. So there are definitely a lot of intricacies that come as people come to apply certain things, um, and yet those intricacies cannot leave people subjected to basically being trafficked or being raped or being targeted. Um, and and because every single person that is subjected to that is there, every cell of the body is busy manifesting total human extinction. And this is um, and since they are incredibly, like, the violence component is there, the alchemy component is there, the occultistic rape component is there. People that occultistically rape don't just manifest something that is not built on rapey foundations. So the manifestation of human extinction is there. And this is where it is, when if people are raped, this manifestation is literally practiced. So this is an occult ritual that brings human extinction. And this is why um, this topic comes about and is so important, because there is no, we saw with what happened in Syria and the burning of the churches, and that and the cultural revolution, that there really is no issue of burning to the ground an entire culture with its lineage and scripture and language and people and legacies. Now the question is, does our occultistic practices and esoteric tradition promote that extinction, or does it tend to abolishing rape? What we definitely no longer have is outer planets in a Venus sign or in the earth element or in the elements that would be associated with the feminine. What we do have is extensive activity in the yang sign, denoting sovereignty. Yes, Ketu is in Magha Nakshatra, somewhat alleviating a lot of the challenges and difficulties, but also, and we're going to have Uranus in Leo when Aries ingresses to Taurus, but up until then, we're going to have Uranus in Cancer, but right now we are having a time that is not suggestive of its results, because the Aldebaran point is a Pyrrhus wind when the feminine is not honored. Um, like I said, I grew in a country that has Mercury Aldebaran and did have perpetual rape, ritual abuse, and so on and so forth. Albeit its most advanced Declaration of Independence, I know what it's like to live in a perpetual war state. I know what it's like to be a child that cannot exist here or there, cannot, until they want to leave, then everybody expects them to die. Until they realize that all of their life they have been recovering since infanthood from rape culture that permeated their sense of self. People want to make rape normal, and it's sometimes the women that are the are kind of like the sticks in the wheels of progress when they are progressing to femicide by complying with rape, by calling rape sex work, and by swiping under the rug basically the practical requirement for people to be raped for housing, for food, for water. When, by the way, one of the side effects of rape is that people sometimes cannot even drink or eat. And even if they do, they can't absorb the minerals, which may or may not have been how we began to eat meat, by the way. Definitely how people came about eating processed meat. And again, we might need meat, but there is a galaxy between what is in the stores and what is the actual food that is nourishing. Um, Now, the fact that everything is in yang sign, and also a lot of the planets are direct. Literally, all the planets are direct, which gives us a really gigantic push forward. If it's anchored in zero rape, zero slavery, zero ritual abuse or occultistic rape or whatnot, then it's anchored in something that really can gather a momentum without being rapey. And that's an amazing thing. That the opportunity is absolutely there. But if it's not, then full gas on neutral, it's the highway to a Pyrrhus win. It's the highway to women occultists bringing literally, how should I say that, the witch hunt upon them by annihilating the women that say, wait a fucking second. Did we have zero rape, zero slavery, zero occultistic rape, zero energy siphoning in strategy and in goal? Were our products, our methods, our teachings used to basically the opposite of? And if so, how do we tackle that? Now, the challenge is that indeed everything is moving so fast and all in air and fire signs, what we call yang. And there is little consideration of the fact, except for Venus that is now about to conjoin Aldebaran very briefly, and Ketu Maga Nakshatra that is really blessed. But except for that, there isn't a Uranus in Taurus anymore. There isn't any outer planet accentuation of let's abolish rape, let's practice the embodied, let's um, remind ourselves that all the rapey practices are not really yielding, they're not materializing when we talk about land, that the fixed land, okay? Literally fixed land sign is in the 8th house, the swiped under the rug issues of Israel. Israel doesn't have a fixed land. And it doesn't because it hasn't appeased, even occultistically, Beta per se. Occultistic rape is not appeasing Beta per se. It undermines itself occultistically. Now, here's the thing. Chiron is going to move through Taurus. Other than that, we don't have anything, any outer planet in Taurus and Libra. In the Mitu, we had Jupiter in Libra on Spica. We have nothing that reminds us of basically anything that is accounting for the feminine, not normalizing rape. And this is something that is, how should I say, that can very easily be gone in a way that even women could be tempted to have a Pyrrhus win, practicing male methods. And here is not to climb up the ladder, but even to try to practice their sovereignty as the rapey secret society does. While Urano Aldebaran is 2 meters respective to Sedna. Think about Sedna approaching Aldebaran. And think about the fact that we really did not have that in 12 millennia. It's not something that we can say, oh, we had that already. Yeah, that was the witch hunt, but it was also like the people that did the witch hunt later were guillotined. So, and with Sedna Aldebaran, it's unprecedented because Sedna Aldebaran means either a Pyrrhus win, which could very well be humanity going extinct and rightfully so, um, or an actual win over 9 millennia of trafficking and dishonoring the feminine. Now, is there a context supporting that? With Sedna, I think she's going to be around 40 years or 50 years in Gemini. So we're talking in about like 10, 15 years. Well, we're going to have Aries ingressing to Taurus. We're going to have Neptune ingressing to Taurus. So there's going to be some support. But the in-between phase, the coming 15 years, we have right now Ketu going through Magha. Um, Fortunately, we're going to have Chiron in Taurus, reminding us that we cannot really heal the land without healing the women and healing the voice, and that goes not with rape. The sex work is not, if sex work is not work, is kind of like what we leave with Uranus and Taurus. That also included the sex workers work campaign, by the way, that was trying to trying to remove the stigma from women that were trafficked, but it was trying to normalize rape. Chiron won't be, with Chiron we won't be able to do that without the complete and total backlash. Particularly, I think Chiron Beta per se, it was either the Great War or I, there was something happening around that Chiron Beta per se that I looked at in one of the previous episodes. Um, and this is where, oh, there was a crisis in Israel. There was a stock crisis in Israel that affected the entire stock market, and it was around artificially stabilizing the stocks, and then people went for the gold when it was abolished, something like that. And that caused the confiscation of the bankings by the state. The banks were confiscated by the state, um, and this was happening in Israel during a Chiron um, Taurus uh, segment. So, but that's so weird because that would be during the 70s to 80. I don't know if it was 83 or something like that. Um, then we would have, I think, both Chiron and Rahu. No, Chiron Rahu would be 84 and onwards because it was doing the ingress. Um, Walking the Ferris. That time when I opened the AstroSeek and I was like, "There's no internet." Oh, anyway, the forecast is the following. Now, this is the conjoining of the Taurus laziness and the computation. Like, I'm too lazy to check what it was. Okay, let's computate. um, Now, um, more things that I can think about in regards to kind of like the coming 15 years. But what we have supportive of the feminine is not like Uranus, which is kind of like liberating. Oh, I'm talking with my yoni. Oh, why is the intelligence trying to get on the line? Like, yeah, because they were building on occultistic rape their entire global legacy. And it's kind of like, well, that, explains a lot. Do the men know that they're fighting for the abolition of their legacies and anything that's meaningful to them? Um, well, and if they're fighting for me, they definitely should not be raping, trafficking, or justifying that as sex work. Now, um, the issue with Chiron is that we are going to access the feminine through the wounded healer. So it's going to be, um, it's kind of like it will remind us that it will be a Pyrrhus win to disregard Chiron in Taurus. And this is where the curation of the voice, the testimonies, um, if you think about the power, the healing power of the testimony, the healing power of being believed, um, will get a tremendous surge. I'm trying to think about the 70s. I know we had Pluto in Libra, and that was the age where they first legislated the abolition of rape within marriage. And we also had Chiron in Taurus. So Pluto in Libra was the personal being the political, whereas Chiron in Taurus was curating something regarding the embodiment and the voice of the feminine, but I'm not too acquainted with how that was expressed in the 70s. Um, more things that I can consider, because all the legislative stuff would be Libra. And so, and thinking what would Taurus be? Taurus would be the testimony. Taurus would be the voice. Taurus would be also in Libra the testimony, but Taurus would be the sense of embodiment. In Taurus, for example, when we're talking about the Me Too, there was the testimonies that they were not they were not turning to the litigation simply because the litigation failed them, and it was a humiliation, degradation ritual. So they were openly speaking up, turning to the hearts of the people, saying, "This is what happened to me. That's the person that did that. This is why I'm not in that industry anymore." And then when it came to the legislation, because of the nature of rape, that voice was of healing quality, and this is why it could not be negated. And in terms of legislation, the right of the public to know was taking precedence over, whenever the judges were not raping children, of course, was taking precedence over the the yeah, basically, um, what was considered due procedure, because of the nature. Now the nature of the offense, what is different in the nature of the offense is rape. It's occultistic rape. It's the esoteric nature of the offense, but we did not have the naming for that, and this is what prompts, immediately brings about and prompts a witch hunt, because the witches that don't practice the witchcraft in order to um, traffic women, or um, survivalistically, appease the patriarchy, those women are actually practicing the witchcraft in a zero rape, to abolish rape, and they are also exposing the structure of criminal offenses that were using occultistic rape, which is the entire world and the entire global society with its denominations. So it seems like it's some esoteric cult or cult to consciousness. Like, who are these cults? The judges, for example. And so Oh, that explained why the court system failed the people that came to testify on rape, even when they were gathering the ability to speak. Now, we want to think also about the women that learned, for example, how to become a lady boss, and then how to invest in the stock market, and then so on and so forth. And they became more exposed to the risks of to the web of risks that the household men were exposed to, and as they were learning these very practices, because if the stocks that they are trading are still trading women. And although women definitely brought more awareness to that topic, when we talk about occult abuse or ritual abuse or wealth consolidation, that would basically, if we think about stocks and risk management, it's another factor of risk management that wasn't previously discussed, and is what happens when a bubble pops, either as confiscating investment in banking altogether, confiscating women rights, particularly the women that changed their last name, and confiscating basically by the investments not yielding or going into a financial crisis or a dip in the stock that, let's say, the stock founders or the company founders could go short on and retrieve their investment, but the people that were more exposed to the volatility of the market couldn't play that same game. Um, And so, with that, there was the beginning of the exposure to the sacrifice of humans, the ritual sacrifice, and the profile risk of running a business became more exposed to the level that the men entrepreneurship was exposed to. And then there were the women that simply complied, and that was called feminism. In Israel, there is a lawyer that was talking about basically rape of 13, 14, 12 years old, saying, hey, and she was trying to authentically think for herself, hey, as a woman, maybe I would also want to have young teenagers wanting basically, and she couldn't get through her attempts to balance the scale, wasn't getting at, hey, that's rape. That thing which you are thinking, hey, if I was a man, or as a feminist woman, I would also like to have that is rape. Just like there was, I think there was a Eurovision song in Israel by a very talented artist, but the lyrics went about kind of like making a man into a toy, and all of these things that are kind of like bringing us back to the teeter tatter and not really exiting the point of gender violence. So one could say, hey, that's a satiric, that's a this, that's a that. Well, also the caricatures on the Jewish stereotypes were satire. Um, and the question is, do we want to continue that? Which, by the way, is a different to the satire that exposed the actual ritual that men go through, the rape ritual and feminization ritual that men go through upon being accepted into those secret societies, which was sugar-free lemonade. So, okay, what is the difference? One is a woman deciding to feminize a man as a revenge ritual. The other one is prompting the fact that men are raped to get accepted into their rituals, and thus they see raping as inclusivity, as a satirical component that is also unfortunately true. And then it's kind of like, well, we need to abolish rape from the secret societies as well. um, this is honoring the feminine. And this is also the reason why people would have all kinds of intricacies, as we saw with Uranus leaving Taurus, where certain people had, I don't know, limerence toward a person that they wouldn't even desire, and the only thing that was preserving that is that both were raped or something of that sort. That both were there when they didn't actually want to be there. And and then nobody knows what happens when people have their yes, no, and maybe respected. Maybe they find each other attractive, maybe not. In any case, it's not the end of the world either way, because rejection is not as scary, because it doesn't mean decapitation or degradation, as being trafficked and calling it sex work, or only the people only receiving help from, while being trafficked, um, when they call it prostitution and not when they call it trafficking. Basically, they have to take the responsibility of the rapist that raped to loss of sense of self, tortured, and mind control them in order to receive some help, which eventually undermines the entire process. And this is why the organization that were supposed to help women out of trafficking were trafficking the women that talked about it as trafficking and not as sex work. We had social welfare workers that were also being sex trafficked, and then of course their job as social welfare would be to target women to traffic them. Now, there really is nothing in the sky other than Ketu Magha and soon to be Chiron in Taurus that discusses that. But this has the potential, not paying attention to that and not including zero rape, zero slavery, zero cultistic rape, and whatnot in our strategy and goal, is subjecting ourselves to either a Pyrrhus win or to our creations and whatever we come up with being not well received. Um, and again, we do have, everything is going direct, all the planets going direct, everything is calling for the window of time is so and so and so and so. Amazing. Certain things were launched, certain things are about to be launched. But now is the time to address that before Uranus goes into conjoining Aldebaran, and definitely before Sedna. Because even if something was launched, it can still be refined tuned, it can still be corrected. Anything that was relying upon trafficking needs to be aborted at once. Now, here is the thing: if we are an owner of a big tech company, then we can go short on our own stocks, refine it, and then reinvest and actually grow from that crisis. If it's something that's not at that level, then there can be intricacy in the how about, but in any case, it cannot leave people being targeted or subjected to harassment or rape or bullying or agendas that would basically um, prevent them from prevent them from not becoming either supportive of global extinction, A bomb, and so on, or being a perpetrator if they don't have access to dropping an A bomb. which would of course target, the most ethical thing to target is the people that have already been trafficking. And here's the thing: blame shifting here won't solve the actual problem. It would create a pyrrhus win. And because we're no longer, and upon Chiron Beta per se, it would also mean that, let's say somebody has, I don't know, a company that begins to be traded in the stock market. Chiron Beta per se could literally confiscate the entire company. It would be profitable, seriously profitable, confiscated by the state. Everything is turned into public housing, let's say. It's kind of like, it's not really a pyrrhus win. I mean, we can't call it a pyrrhus win, but it's definitely, um, and Chiron Beta per se was the confiscation of the banks. So we can definitely think about confiscation of currency, stock markets, banks by the state. What can prevent that? Not subjecting people to being ritually abused or trafficked. Blame shifting here won't help. It's kind of like, hey, I don't have a company. It's not my company is going to be traded and then confiscated. It's not my legacy. I'm not the one with something at stake here. I mean, I have my life at stake, but there's not much I can do about the behavior of, let's say, people that have companies that could, by the way, be traded. By that time, could absolutely upscale and be traded, and Chiron Beta per se will tell the tale if it's traded to be confiscated or if it's traded to actually be traded and have people be able to invest in it as an ethical investment. If there was occultistic rape and people believed the rapist, then essentially it's their legacies and their stockable companies that are going to be confiscated by the rapist, by the occult. Because what is this occult rape designed to do? It's designed to up and 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 then loot. Which is different to fair trade. It's different to up and up and have one's own voice, one's own original creation, or one's own investment in the up and upping. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. But if one is excluded from either participation in trade or entrepreneurship or both, because there is an agenda to traffic them, or even if there isn't such agenda, is subjected to such agenda, then of course the companies will be confiscated by the traffickers. And to show that they're doing charity, they will need to address it as public housing, which then will delay in 6-7 years the same question to be readdressed again. I've seen women, representable women, women that cross as white, women that cross camera, talking about their rape today and their litigation today, talking about the fact that it's still weird for people to talk about rape and to not blame the victim today in 2026. How come after the Me Too we're still having the same conversation at the same level? Now, these women are not to blame. They are struggling their struggle. They don't know that that struggle has already been struggled in this exact fashion in the 70s. And it would be women lawyers that try to explain the system to them so that they can win, leaving no chance to anyone. Now, the women lawyers are also not to blame. They're trying to make the excruciatingly tormenting legal system somewhat accessible, and share their tips so that people can have better chance to fight for themselves. But this is just where the tragedy of even Spica, the utmost epiphany of Libra, tackles, where Aries 12 o'clock from it now saying, hey, dear Spica, until the subject that we are talking, until the person that we are talking about, this particular case, until they will be able to even speak eloquently to litigate, we need the entire earth changing, because every single juncture is, whether therapy, communication therapy, or any juncture, is designed to keep them from recovering. When we have even the places that try to subsidize healing being infiltrated, basically effectively recruiting money to give to the infiltrated people that traffic patients or target patients directly affiliated with Epstein-like endeavors. Where people have to sift, basically pick and sort from what is sent to bait them, from the healing that is sent in order to bait them. They have to comprise their own healing by themselves. כן. Um, Now, let's talk about, it's enough doom and gloom. Let's, first of all, the grace here. The reason that I'm emphasizing that is because really all the planets are moving forward, and all the outer ones are in a young sign. So there's, and a lot of Aries. So we really, the calling to move forward, the calling to launch things, the calling to promote things is evident after the cycle of retrogression, which call us to to liberate, to take action, and so on and so forth. Amazing. That's amazing, and it's in place. And we really don't have that much to remind us of the yin. We don't have that much to remind us to honor the feminine. And this is why this is important, not to abort, not to abolish, to refine, to prepare ourselves for the retrogression, to prepare ourselves for Chiron ingress, to take into account right now, and to understand that, of course, this big stellium in Aries will not always be well received, and that some of that is stemming from all kinds of, I don't know, people and whatever is going with their lives, and then some of that is people are completely peaceful, turning into, wait a second, prior to this I saw, okay, attempts, still harassments going on, still targeting going on, still waking up at 5 a.m. because of weird things, attempts to try to justify treating a person as a weed to basically kill, and in the face of a bigger project. So hey, those things can't be swiped under the rug. If I think about when I was starting to do aromatherapy, then on my apprenticeship, I did an essential oil blend, and then it was simply orange oil. I was listening to the patient, and I was like, hey, patient sovereignty, Morales, orange oil. Orange oil brings back the breathing, which brings back the life energy. I was not certified to treat anything to do with sexual boundary violation within the patient, nor was I planning to. I was treating something like back problems, and this was my apprenticeship. And so, fortunately, that person, when I told them, hey, you need to do something to take away the Holocaust timeline. Not no, it was prior to COVID, and then during COVID, prior to 7th October. And that person tells me, no, 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 you can't just tell that to patients. You trigger the core issue of the core issue of everything that's. And so this was where my attempt at, let's say, aromatherapy wasn't well received, and I was running into somebody that had trauma where I didn't think that they would have a trauma. Even though I knew them, and that was swiped under the rug by both of us. And so, and here was something where I knew that I cannot treat, like, let's say, trauma patients if they don't have another source of treatment, which for me was like, I don't know how to treat people that have trauma, because in therapy they would be subjected to. And then something that brings up solve the issue, and one of those issues could be those things. And this is where, whoa, wait a second. I can't be telling to people, I can't be pinpointing at the core of the issue. And even my instructor was paying attention to the fact that she was like, surely people need to have a process until they go to the, you're like, you pin to the core, and then that oil. And it's kind of like people need to have a process if they can't just tackle that. Um, and the natural thing that happens when I was tending to the topic of, let's say, ritual abuse, and really from the point of what is preventing me from starting a business? Okay, what currency? Oh, there's ritual abuse of people around. Okay, that thing needs to be tackled before I can launch a business, for example. And so for several years tending to that topic, and then I'm like, I'm also the infant. I'm also the infant. It pertains also to me. It somewhat pertains to me. I've been through something that's, oh my God. um, and this is something that um, that even the most well-intending and aware people can run into. Um, and I can say that as a person that has been tending to these things and ran into these challenges. Um, uh, and, and, and that all pertains to needing housing, needing food, the stress of, recovery, and why don't people want to work, and being bombarded with the fact that the entire market sector is rate based. Then what happens? That's what happens. That's the bomb. Okay? And it was not intentional, but that was definitely how everything was pushing everything around.